All right, what's going on, everybody? Simple Sports back with another episode for you. Gonna be talking about everything today. Got a busy day for you. Been an exciting weekend of sports again. Uh, Bunch of great games in the NFL and college. A couple of games I watched in the NBA, so we're gonna talk about it all. Get it all out of the way. I like this method better, as I said before. I like this longer. Hit every sport and just talk about whatever I want to talk about. So that's what we're going to do today. But first, what I want to start off with is really quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time with this. I just want to give my overall opinion really quickly on the Kaepernick thing with GQ. I have stopped talking about this because what I have learned over the last couple of years as I have grown up and matured is people really don't take in information very well. They don't, and they also don't seek information either. There's a handful of people. There, I mean, there's a small section of the population that actually goes out and do their own research and look into things and don't just read headlines, or read what someone said on social media as an opinion with no facts or no research, and they just side with it because it sounds like it makes sense to them. And so, along with this Kaepernick thing, there's a lot of people out there on either side of the fence, whether you are, let's just call it, with Kaepernick or against Kaepernick, without getting into all the mushy details. There's a lot of people on both sides that really have no idea what they're talking about. And they just say things because it makes sense to them. And, like, for example, I read something today on Twitter about the GQ post, and someone said, well, this is what's wrong with the country. And I thought about it, and I'm like, well, even if you just take everything aside, right, forget what side of the equation you're on for a second. So you're telling me the worst, or one of the worst things, now I won't even say the worst, let's say one of the worst, because obviously there's a lot of things wrong with the country. One of the worst things to you is that there's a black man on the cover of GQ being labeled Citizen of the Year, and was labeled so because of the stance he took on police brutality in America. That's one of the worst things in the country right now. Like, that doesn't even, like, now there's some people who will legitimately agree with that. Don't mistake me. I know that. I'm not an idiot. But that's my point, is like, you really, that's what we've come to, that's one of the worst things in the world to you. And so because of that, I have ceased to have this conversation with people about the entire situation for a long time, just because I don't like talking to those people, because there is no progress that will ever be made because they believe things like that. And so for me, I won't even entertain it. Whatever you say, man, hey, you're right. And that's how I feel about it. But to give my opinion on this really quickly, for what it is, I think it's a good thing within the cause. In other words, there's people that are comparing him to, like, Muhammad Ali and, figures of that nature. And I can't speak to that because I wasn't around during those times. All I can do is read about it. So I don't know what it's like to feel that energy around you, like, while it's happening. So I can't necessarily compare it to that. That's my only gripe with it, I guess. And it's not really a gripe. It's more of a stance, I guess. I don't have a problem with it necessarily. I don't know. Like, I couldn't speak to that personally. But what I can tell you is, for what the situation is and what has happened over the last year and some change, it is nice to sort of be a part of something that in the future will be talked about, right? Like, you think about people that are born today or recently, and they talk about all the time, like, man, I wish I could have been a part of, insert whatever it is here. And so it is nice, it is cool to sort of be a part of it. Like, think about all the people, like, think about how entertaining and how good of a feeling you have. Let's say if you're a Pats fan and you're watching the Super Bowl last year and you got to see that game and you were like, man, and you're like, let's say you're like an 80-year-old fan who maybe never went to a Super Bowl, and that was your first Super Bowl, and you're a Pats fan, and that's the game that you got to see. And it's like everyone wants to be a part of something like that, right? And so for me, like, I've always wanted to sort of see firsthand what it would be like to have someone do something of the nature that Kaepernick did, which is took a stance against police brutality. And I don't even like personally to say just police brutality. I think it's just social inequality as a whole, but specifically that cause. So I've always wanted to see that. I spent some time working with my father on a case. If you don't know it, and I think I've mentioned it before, George Stinney, a kid from South Carolina, 14 years old, youngest to be executed for, what has now been proven, has been overturned. I was there. I watched documentaries. I read articles, newspapers, books. I spent time on the internet. I talked to people. I was with my father when he talked to people about this situation. And so I understand it. I think that's why it bothers me so much, because I understand it at a deeper level than I think less than, like 99% of the people that are even involved in this that ever even thought about it. I don't think they even understand it even to that level. And I'm like just scratching the surface. And so I don't want to say it's pointless, but it feels pointless, and I feel like I'm wasting energy talking to those people, because you're never going to change their mind. You're never going to, because they've already associated everything that's happened with something that they see as negative, and a lot of them don't even have any information behind it. All they know is someone told them, well, you 100% respect the national anthem, and when they see someone that they don't like doing something that is disrespectful, even when they themselves don't always do it, but they see someone that they don't like, they have a reason to pounce. And I think we see a lot of that, and there's no convincing them of anything other than what they have said. So I'd rather talk to someone who's on the fence, or even someone that does disagree, but is willing to listen. And maybe you won't change their mind, but at least they're willing to take in the information and see it from another side. And that's all that I want. And so that's why I don't talk to those people. But anyway, that's enough. I've spent way too much time on that as it is. Let's get into the good stuff. So we had a couple of really good games in the NFL. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail with all of them, but Seahawks got the W this week. But took a lot of losses with injuries. Richard Sherman, a couple other guys got nicked up. I have to say, without Richard Sherman, I am no longer confident with them in the playoffs. Now, I think they're going to make the playoffs just fine and all that. I think they'll still be there, but I don't expect them to make any noise. Whereas before, I legitimately think or thought that they could have won the Super Bowl between them and the Eagles. I think they both were vying for top spot in my book, and I think that is no longer the case. So, but I still think they'll make the playoffs. I think they'll be fine. They still have Russell Wilson. They have a great defense, and nonetheless, it's going to have to adjust big time. But I think they'll make the playoffs. I just don't see them winning the Super Bowl at this point. The Cowboys struggled without Zeke. I do want to mention a couple of things with the Cowboys because, first of all, I mean, we kind of figured this would happen. Second of all, I want to point out a couple. I want to dish out some blame here as a fan, just from a distance. Jason Garrett, and I don't even want to say Jason Garrett. I shouldn't say Jason Garrett. I mean, he is the CEO, so to speak. But so I guess ultimately, yes, it is still up to him. But I want to call out the coaching staff as a whole because I gotta tell you that left tackle, Green, Chaz Green, I think. Dude, now I don't know if it was a scheme thing, so I don't want to blame the wrong person. All I know is he's getting his butt whooped, and there was never an adjustment made. And I want to call out Dak Prescott as well because I have to tell you, like, again, this is coming from a fan, so I don't know. So part of me saying this is also asking, like, does a head coach, and the reason I put Dak Prescott involved in this is because of what I'm about to say. Does a head coach really have that much power over, say, your quarterback? Any player, but a quarterback, where you, as a quarterback, know, or at least should know, that something is happening that is not good, and your game plan is not adjusting to it. You should be adjusting to it. And I guess my question is, if he knows that this is not working, Dak Prescott, if he knows this isn't working with the left tackle, does the coach have so much power over him that he can't go to the coach and say, hey, we need to make a change here, or just make a change at the line of scrimmage? I'm asking because if that is the case, then obviously he deserves a pass for that. But if not, which I'm assuming it's not, you have to adjust to that as well, Dak Prescott. Like, I'm assuming he can make some sort of slide adjustment, or tell someone to stay in on the route, whatever the case may be. I guess it's a two-part thing, because I'm saying if he does have that power and that privilege, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, then he obviously deserves some blame as well, because there was no adjustment made. I guess I'm trying to figure out who should have made the adjustment, because the coaching staff should have made it no matter what. I guess the other part of it is Dak Prescott also responsible for not making the adjustment? Because if he doesn't have the power to, if he's not allowed to make those changes, which again I'm assuming he is, then obviously you can't blame him for it. But you can see they miss Zeke dearly, and I know a lot of people are saying, well, it depends on the line as well, but here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to running the football. You don't necessarily need the yardage all the time. Like, that's not necessarily what it's about. There are plenty of teams who run the football that aren't good at running the football, but you have to do it for the sake of making, linebackers and safeties and whatnot honor that, especially when it comes to play action, because if you're not running the football and then all of a sudden, you throw in a play action, like, it's not going to fool anyone. So you have to run the ball not only for the yardage, but for consistency and for game plan, and also to give your quarterback a break and give your receivers a break and to eat up the clock. Like, there's so many reasons other than the simple fact of gaining yardage. Like, the Patriots aren't great at running the football, but they run it because you have to have that consistency. There's, again, every team should be, even if they're not great at doing it, you still have to run the football. Now, obviously, when you get in situations where you're behind, things like that, that's a whole different story. But my point is, in general, teams run the football in addition to getting yardage. They do it because to run the clock, to make sure teams honor your play action, and so many other things. So my point is, why did the Cowboys go so heavily away from it? Now, I get it, obviously, towards the end, second half, like, you have to throw the ball a lot more. But you have a young quarterback. You have, your starting left tackles out. Your starting running backs out. Like, you have to make adjustments as a coaching staff and as a quarterback, I would imagine. Now, the defense is a whole separate thing. Sean Lee was out. There's some reason to worry there, but because he's always hurt. But, like, I'm just strictly speaking to Dak and to the coaching staff, like, you have to make some kind of adjustment, right? It's clearly not working with the left tackle. You may as well have had a traffic cone there. So, you can slow it down a little bit by making them honor the run, and then also helping, having a running back or a tight end help block. Like, it'd be one thing if you were doing that and you were still getting demolished. And it's like, well, at this point, we need better talent, which is obvious because they're missing their left tackle, and I get that. But to not make an adjustment, like, I don't get that at all. Like, he was clearly getting smoked over there. So I don't know what they were doing. I can't necessarily fault Dak yet. Obviously, he didn't play that great, all things considered. He hung in there, but, given you don't have a left tackle and there's no adjustments being made to help him, there's no running game. Like, I understand there's a lot to deal with there, but At the same time, you got to make plays and you got to adjust if you're the quarterback. I'm assuming he has that kind of power to do so. I don't see why any quarterback wouldn't. Like, obviously, if you have that big of an issue, something needs to be done. But that's just me. The Saints smoked the Bills. I called that one. But look, the Saints are legit. Anyone that's doubting the Saints still, no, don't do it. They're legit and they have an elite quarterback. Enough said. Moving over to the AFC for a little bit. Here's what I learned about the AFC this weekend. Really, last weekend is when I learned it. This weekend just confirmed it for me. The AFC is the Patriots, and that's it. There's no other team in the AFC, to me, that can compete with the Patriots. Now, there are a couple of teams that are out there that maybe they start to get hot this time of year, rolling into the playoffs, and you may change your mind. There's still a long ways to go before the playoffs get here. So I'm not saying this is going to be the final say, but as of right now, it's the Patriots and everybody else. And I'm talking about this year. It's been that way for a long time, but I'm saying this year in particular, because there was some doubt by some people. I never did, but I just want to make it clear to those people that were doubting. It is the Patriots and it is everyone else. Period. The Steelers are not impressive. There's no other team that is impressive to me. The Chiefs are not impressive. The Titans are not impressive. The Titans are not beating the Pats I think the Titans could beat any other team in the AFC in the playoffs. I think you can line them up, and if they bring their A game, like they showed against, say, Seattle, if they do that, I think they can compete and beat every single team in the AFC. They've beaten the Steelers before. They beat the Chiefs last year. They beat the Broncos. Well, the Broncos aren't really competing this year, but they just beat the Ravens. They beat the Bengals. They can beat every team in the AFC. They're not touching the Pats. Period. I love my Titans. That's not even going to be competitive. Well, I shouldn't say it's not going to be competitive because the Titans do play the brand of football you would need in order to beat them, which is run the football, play action, and then try to play defense. But at that point, I think they're just not even close to talented enough, and especially not. Tom Brady is going to eat Adoree Jackson alive in the playoffs. That's just, part of the thing. But I think they could beat every other team in the AFC in a playoff game. But they got to make it there first. But they have won 4 straight, so I'm happy. They got a good win over the Bengals. They still seem to let off the gas in the second half way too early. That's my big concern with them right now. I think they've played fine up until that point, and then they just kind of let off the gas a little bit. I did like the fact, though, that they went down to the Bengals, and they responded both on defense and on offense. Mariota drove them down and got a touchdown. That was nice to see. But outside of that, they're too inconsistent for me. And, yes, they won 4 straight, but 2 of those games they easily could have lost. The Giants are a mess. The 49ers are a mess. The Browns are a mess. There's a lot of teams that are a disaster. No need to dwell on the Giants. I don't even know what that was on Sunday. The Rams are a real team. I am sold on the Rams now. I wasn't quite sold on them previously, even up to last week. No, they're the real deal. The Rams are legit. If you don't take them serious, take them serious. They are legit. And the defense is starting to come together. The offense is already ridiculously explosive. The defense is starting to come together, and they got they definitely got the best defensive lineman remaining right now, aside from J.J. Watt possibly. But Aaron Donald is a man-child. So the Rams are legit. If you're not taking them serious, you need to. Moving on to the college football scene. Pretty exciting weekend. A lot of upsets. Georgia went down. Notre Dame got crushed. Georgia got crushed too. But Bama, I don't want to say this. There's 2 sides to Bama. There's some people that say they struggled with Mississippi State, and then there's some people that say no, people are just down on the SEC is better than you think, and it was actually just a really good game. I don't know. which way I fall in that, I tend to lean more towards the SEC is not all it's cracked up to be. It's obviously better than it was last year, for sure. I'm not saying it's not that, but it's not this all like godly thing that people have made it out to be, and some people still do. But that's another one of those topics that there's some people you're just never going to convince otherwise. It is what it is. The one thing I do want to talk about really quickly is the Buckeyes, because obviously I'm a Buckeyes fan. They got smoked by Iowa, and then they went out and crushed Michigan State, which was nice to see. Very refreshing. But also, last week, I thought that they would be out of the playoffs, not even close. And then I sat down, especially after this weekend. I was like, wait, well, if you look at the schedule, you look where they're ranked, you look at the other team's schedule in the top 10, a lot of them play each other, which means a lot of them are going to lose, obviously. And if the Buckeyes win out, I think there's a good chance that they could actually get in. Because chances are they're going to be playing Wisconsin in the Big Ten Championship. They've already beat Penn State and Michigan State. They got to play Michigan. There's a chance that they could get in. And I, as a fan, I would like to see, just as a fan, just as a fantasy, I'd like to see Bama, Ohio State, Miami, and Oklahoma make the playoffs. That's just me. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I actually don't think it's going to happen. But purely as a fantasy, that's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see Bama and Ohio State, and then Miami and Oklahoma. And then you get not Oklahoma. Well, I think first I would like to see the Oklahoma-Ohio State rematch for the national championship. That's the first thing I would like to see. That, now you want to talk about a game that will probably go down in history, that would be the one. Oklahoma, Ohio State, after the Baker Mayfield planting of the flag, they got blown out this year by Oklahoma. They blew Oklahoma out last year. And there's been a lot of trash talking between the two teams, ugly matchups, and you got an explosive quarterback in Baker Mayfield, who also has a bit of a dog in him. And JT Barrett, same way, but he's a little more mellow. And then obviously a great coach in Urban Meyer. That would be a game for the ages. And then Miami, just because you would sort of get a little throwback with the Ohio State-Miami game. The Willis McGahee injury game, that game, if anyone remembers that was a great game. And that was the last time Miami was in the national championship. So what a way to introduce them back to the country as, yeah, the U is back, than to get into the national championship against the Buckeyes. That would be pretty interesting. So that's what I would like to see, just from a fan standpoint. However, I don't think it's going to pan out that way, but it would be nice. It would be nice. And the last, I want to talk about the NBA a little bit. Not going to spend too much time on this as well. Again, I like to just touch and go, at least for now, until I can get doing this, full time. That's the plan, hopefully. And when I do that, then I'll go, a lot deeper on all of these things. But for now, this is what I'm going to do. So anyway, NBA. First thing is, Cavs are a mess. Okay, they're a mess. And what I don't like is everyone seems to want to give LeBron James a pass, because on one hand, everyone wants to say he's the coach and the GM and he's the CEO and he does everything, and it's LeBron. And then all of these things happen that are bad. They go on losing streaks, and there's stories in the media, and this player is disgruntled, and something that got leaked here, and somebody said something on Twitter or Instagram, and now all of a sudden it's not LeBron, because, well, you just said he was the GM and this and that and this. So if he's the GM, who was it that got all these players here that you now want gone and you say are garbage? Well, he's the one that brought him here. So if he's the GM and he brought him here, then he needs to be blamed for that, right? That's how I look at it. Now, I'm not saying all of those things are the case, but that's what a lot of people like to do. And I don't understand that. I think LeBron does deserve some blame, because no matter what, even if he's not the GM and he's not the coach and he's not all of these things, which I think to a certain degree he is, because of how powerful he is and how good he is, he has to be. to a certain point. Like, you can't have LeBron on your team and then build a team that would be centered around, a Shaquille O'Neal. Like, that, it just doesn't work. Like he's the best player, therefore you have to build around him. So he sort of by default is the GM, so to speak. He's the centerpiece of the team. So yeah, and same thing goes with coaching. Like, yeah, he's the centerpiece of the team. He's the best playmaker. He's the best everything for them. So he has to be the center of the offense, which means the offense does need to go through him. So that means he does need blame when things go bad. And that's what people need to understand. So, LeBron's an all-time great. I love LeBron. I used to hate LeBron. And then as I started to grow up and really understand sports and business and the world, I've become a huge LeBron James fan. But, again, he deserves some blame for the things that are going on. And people need to start recognizing that. And then moving on to Kyrie, I just want to point out that Kyrie looks happy, which is nice. He just suffered the injury to the face, which sucks. But overall, Kyrie looks happy. He looks to be playing well. He looks to be enjoying playing. This is coming from a fan, so obviously I don't know what it's like in the locker room. But all things look well, so I'm happy for him. I think a lot of people need to understand everything that's going on and why he left and why he wanted to leave and why it's not a bad thing. I don't understand why people want to condemn him for wanting to be his own guy. He would have stayed under LeBron's shadow, and everyone's saying, oh, well, if you stay with LeBron, you can win. Yeah, he can win, but he will never get the credit for it. Never. He would never get the credit for it. And maybe it's not necessarily about having the credit, but it's the fact that you deserve the opportunity to make your own place in history. And he was never going to do that other than LeBron James. He never was. So let the guy live. Like, let him be. I don't understand why people are killing him for it. And there's other people that say, well, if he wants to be the quote-unquote man, he could just stay in Cleveland, stay with LeBron, get an opportunity to win, and then when LeBron's done, he's now the man. Why would he want to be in Cleveland? I don't understand that. Who's to say he would want to be in Cleveland? I'm talking about the city, because if LeBron James is gone, then that part is irrelevant. So who's to say he would want to be in Cleveland? No. I wouldn't. But that's just me, I guess. Kyrie, I see you. And people still killing KD too, and I don't understand that. Like, oh, well, he left because he got the of the year from GQ, and that sort of resurfaced. And I'm like, I don't understand that either. Why do people hate KD? He did something to further his career, to make himself better, which is in turn going to make him more popular, more solidified in NBA history, which makes him more money, which then makes his life better. So his NBA career got better, his business got better, his life got better as a whole, but it was a terrible decision. What? Not to mention, he said, I know I'm a great player. Everyone knows that I'm a great player. Everyone knows that I'm a great talent. Why not, instead of making this harder on myself and trying to, quote, do it on my own, why don't I make it easier and go play with really, really great players, and a lot of them? That makes no sense to me either. It's called work smarter, not harder. What? That doesn't make any sense to me. Work smarter, not harder. KD, I see you. You do your thing. I don't understand these people. So I watched the Lakers. Lakers look promising. They're not good, but they look excited to play. They're sharing the ball. Everything seems to be in the positive trend, at least. Lonzo Ball has struggled, especially scoring and shooting in particular. I think people need to get off his back. He is a kid, okay? That's what everyone needs to realize. The jump from... If you think about college sports and professional sports, right? The people that play in college, when they were in high school, it was very clear that they could go play in college for the most part, right? There's some people who struggled in high school or weren't necessarily standouts that went on in college and in the pros to be great. But by and large, the people that play in college, when you look at their high school tape, it's clear they can play in college, right? And then the same goes for the pros. There's certain people now. There's less success rate than it is from college to high school, but you can look at a college athlete and say, well, that guy can play or that woman can play in the pros. Period. And then there's some that are hidden gems. There's some that don't work out for whatever reason, physically, mentally, emotionally, whether it be from the environment that they're in, or maybe they just never were really in it. But physically, you can look at a player and say, he or she can play in the pros. He or she can play in college. Lonzo Ball can play in the pros. We've seen it. You don't do the things that he's doing by accident, okay? It's not a fluke. The jump from college basketball to NBA is such a massive leap compared to NFL from college football. You can get a rookie in the NFL that could really help you win games. May not win a Super Bowl, may not win AFC championship or NFC championship. You may not even win a playoff game, but you can get a rookie in the NFL that can turn your franchise around. Case in point, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott. Like, these young players can affect your franchise immediately. You can see turnaround. Andrew Luck, Cam Newton. Like, you see the turnaround. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a lot of growth, so I don't want to misconstrue the difference, right? But, in the NFL, you can affect it a lot more quickly than you can in the NBA. In the NBA, it is very rare. In fact, I can't even remember the last time a rookie was a sensational superstar in their first year, because that's what they would have to be and lead their team to a championship or a Western or Eastern Conference Finals. If I'm overlooking one immediately, obviously someone let me know, but off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone. The last player I know that took their team to the playoffs, man, I can't even think. But that's the point. It doesn't happen like that. Like, look at Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has been in the league for a couple of years. They haven't even sniffed a championship. Giannis, same way. He's been in the league for a couple of years. Haven't even sniffed one. What? I mean, there's tons of these young players. Jaylen Brown, Gordon Hayward, like Paul George. All of these young players. KD up until last year. That never even won a championship. Never even got close. KD got close. Closer than all these other guys, but he wasn't a rookie. He was still a couple years into the league. He was 6 years, 5 years into the league. He's an all-time great, so that's a little bit different. But it still took him. I mean, look how long it took LeBron. LeBron, for a lot of people, is on the Mount Rushmore of basketball. Look how long it took him to win his first championship. My point is, why are people killing these rookies and first, second, third year players? Lonzo Ball, there's people that are killing him. He's 20. He doesn't even have a beard. He doesn't even have a connecting beard. There's so many things that he doesn't even know how to do. And this is coming from me. I'm 27 years old. And it sounds like I'm a grandfather speaking to my grandson. Like, he's 20, and he's frail. I never felt a fully developed man just physically until I was about 24, 25 years old. That's when I felt in my prime, when I was like the strongest, felt the best, in shape, like, he's 20 years old. And he's played, not only that, he's not even 2 full months into the season. They probably don't even have a diet worked out for him yet. That's how fresh he is. And people are killing him. They are killing him. And I'm like, dude, you can see all it is hate. That's all it is. And the media is largely responsible for it. And I'm not, and then when I want to talk about this as well really quickly, because it's something that's been bugging me lately. there's a lot of people on TV and radio, and I could be naive in thinking this because it could very well be that they know and they just are making money, which I'm sure in a lot of cases it is. But there's a lot of these people that don't seem to understand the influence that they have on people, especially the people that don't do their own research and they just go with what people say that sounds right. Like, they say some things that it just blows my mind, and they get people to start these conversations, and then you have these, again, you have the segment of people that don't really read into things, and so whatever sounds right, that's what they go with. And so they start these narratives about these athletes that don't even, like, you should never, like, that's not even a discussion. Not yet. Lonzo Ball, he's a rookie. I don't understand. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me that the media, and they place these narratives on players. 2 weeks into the season, is he a bust? And then he goes out and gets a triple-double, and now all of a sudden, LeBron James is coming to the Lakers. I don't understand how they're so hot and cold all the time. And I get it. Again, part of it's entertainment, so, whatever. I still consume it. But I guess my point is they don't understand that people take that stuff to heart. And those people, again, albeit a lot of them don't read into things and read for themselves, but, like, they just take those statements way too far, and the media knows it, and they just run with it, and they change their mind every day. Andrew Luck's a bust. Andrew Luck's a great player. Andrew Luck may never play again. And that's over the course of a week. Can we get some information first? 1 week, Colin Cowherd is talking about the Chiefs are the best team in football, and then the next week he's out on the Chiefs. Like, you got to have some, and that's why I'm such a huge fan of Skip Bayless. A lot of people don't like Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless, you can say what you want about him, but he 99% of the time is with his opinion. Whatever his instinct or initial reaction to something is, he usually sticks with that. Unless he gets some information, in which case he usually will admit, you know what, I was wrong, or you were right, or whatever the case may be. And that is one of the reasons why I really, really like Skip Bayless, because he's willing to do that. And not everyone is willing to take in information and say, you know what, I was right, or I was wrong, or you were right, or you were wrong. Lonzo Ball is a rookie. It's okay. Yes, there's a lot of things he has to work on, especially his shooting and scoring, and being a little more aggressive. And, the list goes on and on and on. He needs to get thicker. He needs to get stronger. He needs to get a little quicker. There's so many things that he has to do, but he's a rookie. Not even a quarter through the season. Think about how long it took. I'm not saying he's going to even be close to LeBron James, but think about how long it took LeBron James to be a champion. For a while, there were people that were talking about him being overrated. He hadn't won a championship, and then he choked. And then he choked big time against the Mavericks. And there were people like, oh, my God, this guy is a bona fide, not bust, but he's a choke artist. And then he came through. It took him, what was that, 9 years? When did he win that? 2012? Yeah. So 10 years, basically. He came in 03. Basically 10 years. It's 9. But over the course of a decade, he was just another dude. Wasn't just another dude, but he was just another guy who hadn't won a championship. And Lonzo Ball, again, that was over the course of a decade. Lonzo Ball is into his first 2 months of his entire career. There are a lot of things that he does very, very well, and there's things that he doesn't. Lay off of him. He's 20 years old. Relax. Give him time. There's a lot of what's interesting as a Laker fan, and what's a sigh of relief and what's good is the things that he needs to work on can be fixed. His shooting can be fixed. Well, let me rephrase. There are things that can be adjusted, that can definitely be adjusted, right? His shooting can be adjusted and possibly fixed. His body size, his girth, his strength, his lift, his speed, his quickness, those things can be adjusted and fixed and upgraded, so to speak. That's going to come just as he gets older. Same thing with Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram is as small as my index finger. I could push Brandon Ingram around. He'll get there. KD was the same way. I'm not saying he's KD, but people were saying the same thing about KD. First of all, KD has still filled out, but you still can't stop him. So what does it matter? You can see the things that they can do on the court or on the field, and you can tell these are things that are going to last. These are sustainable attributes. Him being undersized is not one. Okay, they'll get him in the weight room. They'll get him on the right nutritional plan. They'll get him physically ready over the next couple of years. He's not even a man yet. You have to relax, man. Well, that's all I got for this episode. Run out of things to say, but I think I got a lot off my chest. So I will see you guys in the next episode. Peace. I got to work on my intros and outros. They're pretty all right, bye.